Alright guys, welcome back to Only Divergences. Today is Sunday, November 14th, and we are getting ready for a brand new trading week with a ton of potential. I wanted to do a video about the cannabis sector to commemorate getting over 420 subscribers for obvious reasons. Now, I know a lot of you are watching me for the first time or are not subscribed, but I think if you watch this video all the way to the end, you will find extreme value in joining me on this ride and subscribing right now, because I'm going to show you things that you cannot see anywhere else. All right, so let's start off with Canopy Growth. Okay, look, the stock is in a downtrend after an unreasonable and unjustifiable spike earlier this year. Can we compare the current trend that it's in, the current move, to anything else? Absolutely. I want to focus primarily on weekly timeframes, as this provides context and outlines real potential, at least according to my method. So, have we ever had anything like this? Well, let's first take a look at the MACD here, because the MACD is showing, relative momentum strength. And we can see what we had. We've had a very long period of negative histogram here, red, but it looks like it's coming to an end, right? You can see almost a little bit of a green here, and it's starting to flip over. So have we ever had something like this? Yeah, right here. Right here, we had a MACD that was like this. It was red for a very long time, and then it flipped over. So we can ask ourselves, really, what happened after that point? So what happened? Well, we got some upside. We got some nice upside, actually. But we did have some volatility along the way. And ultimately, we did have lower prices for longer before we even got higher prices. And ultimately, we're below where we were in that prior move. This move higher here, which you probably want to see happen if you are watching this video, was the result of a year-long divergence. Look at this. A year-long divergence that was building up and finally got released around here. So the weekly tells us that we do not have the material potential for a move like this earlier in the year, even if the current move is not done moving higher, as we can see is likely the case right here. I think that sometime we'll see a move higher, but that does not mean that we're not going to see lower prices. We can see this better by going on the daily time frame here. So we can see here in our current move, it's been very clear that the MACD has been showing higher lows, right? So we've got this low here on the MACD daily, we got this low here, got this low, which is just slightly above this one. And then once we started coming down here with the MACD already pointing and moving higher, all of these lows were very divergent. And that's why when we did get flushes lower, like during this earnings call, we saw a reversal right away. And if we go back to the analog that I just pointed out, we can see similar thing, right? We have this was pretty much the low in MACD momentum, and then we had a higher low, and we had a slightly higher low here, and then we see price kind of started to turn around here. We consolidated for a bit, and then we did pop up above it before coming back down. One thing I want to point out here is you can see on this daily here that this pattern here, just look at the moving averages, right? Look at price relative to the moving averages. This move looks very, very similar to this right here, right? So we're coming down. Moving averages, the near-term ones are, this one here is still pointing negatively, but these ones are starting to flatten, right? Same here, still pointing negative, but starting to flatten. So look, the stock is in a downtrend, and it did have a release to the upside, as one would expect in a normally functioning market. And if we use this analog perfectly, we can see that there is some material upside potential on the way if the analog does repeat. But this was followed by a move lower. Now, let's not forget that this move lower was the COVID plunge. And I don't think we're going to see something like that again very soon. I could be wrong, but that's just my assumption. Now, when we look at this objectively, we can say that, just because we have a similar pattern here, that does not mean that we can expect a move like this, moving higher here, nor does it mean that if we do get a move higher, that we should expect a move to come lower like this. We're just using the analog as a guidepost. I'll point out that the stock has moved from, somewhere around $11 to $15. That's basically a 40% move in a matter of days, in fact, in a week. And so near term, we could see a bit of consolidation similar to what we saw when we had this move before. And look, this was on an earnings miss. Right, you see, we collapsed after the earnings, and then we bounced. Similar here, we had this earnings here, collapsed, and then bounced. So if the stock can go higher, how higher can it go? And when exactly should we expect that? Look, I cannot answer that right now. And if I cannot answer that for a stock, generally I see no reason to get involved and deploy fresh capital. Personally, I think the move has already happened, and we will see some consolidation before we see anything material. But just ask yourself a question. What do you see happening here? In fact, let me pull out to the weekly. Now, we did point out that this move here was a result of a, look at this divergence forming here, very long divergence. We can see the MACD diverging higher after it came lower from here. Do we have that here? Not necessarily. In fact, we're closer to this point here than this point, obviously. I hope that this is clear to everybody watching. Now, I'll say that this idea generally applies across the industry. Let's take a quick look at Tilray. See, we have a similar thing, right? This move here that happened earlier this year, you can see this long divergence that resulted in it. And the move really didn't start until we got above the MACD, right? So you can just look at this and say, I'm not going to be buying until we get right to this midline of the MACD. And what happens afterwards? You get a nice big multi-week explosion higher. We don't have that set up here right now on Tilray. Now, one thing I do want to say is that does not mean that the stock cannot go higher. It just means that the current pattern is not one that is similar to the pattern that we had prior to the previous spike higher. And if we take a look at the Cannabis ETF, MJ, we see again a similar pattern. Now, obviously, that's because the Cannabis ETF is heavily weighted Tilray and Canopy, but all of these stocks trade in line. That said, there's really no need to do any further analysis. All I want to say is that I would not entirely dismiss the potential for this being a higher low. Right? So I don't like this here because it says a lot of bag holders and all that. But look at this. We have a low, we got a higher low, and then we got another higher low. As an objective technical analyst, I have to accept the argument as not invalid that this could actually be forming some type of bullish divergence. And then that would therefore have to apply to Tilray and Canopy as well, which we can see. But you can see Canopy is not, a little bit more precarious position because we have this low here, which is a higher low, meaning that this is actually not bullish divergence unless you're comparing it to this low back here, which is again a little bit of a stretch and not something that I'm comfortable with. This move right here, this spike, created a lot of bag holders. So you're going to have a lot of overhead supply, which could suppress price. But it's still there. And I would be naive and irresponsible to simply ignore the idea that this could actually move higher. Now, I'm not long or short cannabis. I'm trying to be as objective as possible, and a big part of that is understanding both sides of an argument. So, I mean, overall, I think in the next month, we actually could see higher prices. In fact, in the next couple of weeks, we could see higher prices. The long and the short of it is that I am not seeing a pattern that is devoid of all potential risk, right? So as much as this could be something good, this could also be something right here. And I think that given the pattern that we have right now, this is not sufficient for me to say, okay, well, this is a reversal and we're going to be jumping higher, given what I've outlined here, even though we do have this potential bullish divergence that goes a long, long way back. So I will leave it at that for now and probably only visit the sector again next month, even if we do get a nice move higher, for Canopy, maybe we can get something up to the mid-20s, maybe. I would be a little weary of that, but I just don't see it as something that provides the immediate upside potential that I'm looking for, given this reversal that we've already had. And we can see that in previous times when you have these types of reversals and downtrends, what happens is you get either consolidation or it gets faded. So I'll end it here. Thanks for watching. I'll be putting out Robinhood next, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care, guys.